Hello and welcome to episode 324 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jason. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
You've had an aviation-filled week, even more so than usual.
Yeah, I haven't really gone anywhere other than I went to London on work. We have an office at London. Well, I guess it's not really London. It's at Heathrow, about as close to the runway as you could get without actually being on the airport. So I participated in some meetings and was a little distracted some of the time. No big deal.
I believe some of the time might be underselling based on the amount of photos that I've been sent this week.
Yes, except for today where they flipped the runways around because the wind had shifted. So everything is landing way down on the other side of the runway. We don't really get to see anything. But when the wind is blowing, I guess, out of the east, everything, if they're landing on this side of the complex, everything touches down basically directly in front of the windows in the office. And I mean, like, everything touches down at that spot, and it's Heathrow. It's one of the busiest airports in the world and one of the most varied airports in the world, so that you see a lot of things here that I just don't get to see at home. And I may have parked myself in front of the window, and every 2 minutes when the plane lands, I gotta stop, look out the window, take a picture, take a video. Or it's very important to remember what we're all here for. Yeah,
exactly.
Airplanes. But it was good. I enjoyed it. Very productive, except for that couple moments.
You flew to London.
I did.
And normally I ask, what kind of aircraft did you fly? But today I'm going to ask, what was the name of the plane?
The name of the plane was the most appropriate name to fly to the UK on. And I flew on an airplane named Minty McMintface. Pause
there
for
it
silence.
Is.
Pause for silence. And for those who are probably wondering, what the heck is he talking about? JetBlue, who I flew here, names every one of its aircraft. Most of them have the word blue in it. JetBlue, they have the word blue in it. For their Mint-equipped aircraft.
Airface. I like it.
They usually have the word Mint in there somewhere. And this aircraft was named Minty McMintface. And it's on the nose of the plane. It's on the IFE system. It says, "Welcome aboard. Today you're flying on Minty McMintface." I was just very disappointed that the cabin crew, who usually calls out on the PA in the welcome on board announcement, mentions the name of the aircraft. They did not announce "Welcome on board Minty McMintface."
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, unfortunately, that will not be my aircraft home tomorrow, so I won't get another go on Minty McMintface. But what can you do?
You can't win them all.
No, I'll be on one of their rare aircraft, actually, that doesn't have a name that is either blue or mint. It's named after Joel Peterson, so it's not funny at all, but that's okay.
Well, it'll be a nice ride home. And
yeah, it was my first time in business class on a long-haul narrow-body aircraft, and I quite enjoyed it. And I know we've talked about this before, and I know a lot of people are petrified of the idea, but I enjoyed my time.
Excellent. Well, yes. We'll have to talk more about it next week after you've had a return flight. We'll get into that then. Let's get on to the news. As of today, Wednesday, June 11th, Silver Airways has ceased operations. This was the ATR operator out of Fort Lauderdale and Tampa, and they operated to other Florida destinations as well as places in the Caribbean, in the Bahamas, and they also operated a seaplane route. And I'm not sure if that has been affected or if it's just the whole thing. But Silver said, quote, "In an attempt to restructure in bankruptcy," which they declared late last year, quoting again, "Silver entered into a transaction to sell its assets to another airline holding company, who unfortunately has determined to not continue Silver's flight operations in Florida, the Bahamas, and the Caribbean. Please do not go to the airport." And then the airline says all credit card purchases should be refundable through your credit card company or your travel agency.
Yeah, sad, but Silver had been circling the drain for kind of seemingly ever. And it's funny, you introduced them as the ATR operator, but for the majority of its existence, I think it was a Saab 340 operator. And the ATRs were only in the last couple of years. I think I remember
Yeah.
they had them introduced in like 2019, and they were sitting around for quite a while as they weren't able to put them into service for some reason. But towards the end, they were ATRs only, one of the only ATR operators really in the US or Canada at all. But Silver had been just circling the drain for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. I mean, not an extensive route network, not an extensive fleet. Many of their aircraft had left the fleet in recent months, some even before the bankruptcy filing in December, and then many between then and now. They are left with, as of yesterday, I believe 7 aircraft operated yesterday. And then that's out of 14 that they had in their fleet as of late. So not a huge airline, but one that did a lot of connecting between Florida and the Caribbean and Florida and Bahamas. So it'll be interesting to see if anything moves in to fill that space.
Yep. I would imagine just the majors will reintroduce themselves, and that'll be that.
Also ceasing operations is Jetstar Asia. So this is
soon, very soon.
Well, they're scheduled to cease operations. The last flight for Jetstar Asia will take place on the 31st of July. The balance of the aircraft will be moved over to Jetstar proper. Qantas, which is the parent company of Jetstar, has been losing money. Jetstar Asia will have lost money with the fiscal year that ends at the end of this month. And so they've decided to, in the face of, well, I mean, it's the story of the low-cost carrier, right? Rising supplier costs, rising operational costs, and increased competition. So at some point, you can no longer be a low-cost carrier, and then you either adapt or you don't, and you get shut down and get sent off to other airlines.
And importantly, this is Jetstar Asia, the Singaporean-based offshoot of Jetstar. That's not Jetstar proper in Australia. It's not Jetstar Japan, but it's yet another Jetstar that's no longer a Jetstar. There was previously Jetstar Pacific, which I flew. That was the Vietnamese subcarrier, which then became some other thing owned by Vietnam Airlines, and or running out of Jetstars. But I think what is notable here is how quick the wind down is and how little run up there was to this announcement. I hadn't heard much rumor or speculation about this, and all of a sudden it's, we're done in a month and a half from now. If you have a flight booked on or after July 31st of this year, you don't anymore. Here's your money back. Good luck. Not great. These kind of things, if you're winding down a business, usually there's a lot more lead up to it. Unless it's, we have run out of money and we can no longer operate the business. This was, we don't want to run the business anymore, so we're not gonna. Not great to put customers out like that, but they're refunding everyone. If you have vouchers, they'll refund that. But if you were previously booked on Jetstar Asia, you're probably not too happy that you now have to scramble for alternate transportation, which could be substantially more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always the thing there is that, sure, they're refunding the money that you paid them, but there's maybe a 1% chance that you can find a ticket at roughly the same price.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you're booking closer in.
Shout out for travel insurance, I guess, though. I don't even really know if it covers my airline doesn't exist anymore. I'm sure some do and some don't.
Yeah, exactly. If you have travel insurance, check your policy. Let's see. The NTSB issued a preliminary report on the American Airlines 737 fire in Denver. That occurred on the 13th of March. There were 12 minor injuries. No one was seriously injured. This was a fire on the right-hand side of the aircraft because of the number 2 engine after landing. This was a flight from Colorado Springs to Dallas. The aircraft diverted to Denver, and as they were taxiing to the gate, there was the notice of fire. Fire ensued in the area of the number 2 engine, and the passengers and crew evacuated the airplane. The captain noted high engine vibration indications for the right engine, and that was when they decided that they were going to divert to Denver, thanks to the long runways available and other facilities. So there's a few things here. One of the things, and I think we've talked about this recently, is that there was difficulty communicating between the cabin crew and the flight crew. So the passengers were the first to say, hey, the airplane's on fire. So the flight attendants try and call the flight deck. They don't get an answer. Then the flight attendant bangs on the flight deck door. They don't get an answer. Passengers get up and they want to get off the plane. So the flight attendants commanded the evacuation of the aircraft. They used the L1 door, which was already attached to the jet bridge, both of the left overwing exits, and the R2 door. The L2 door was observed open, and the escape slide became jammed in the door, preventing its operation. But the R2 door slide deployed as it was supposed to. The NTSB investigation has found a few different things, and we are again back in Rockwell Turbo encabulator territory as I'll read through this. The NTSB report says, quote, the right engine was examined and all the engine fan blades were present, but one fan blade platform was fractured. In addition, the lock wire of a fuel fitting on the variable stator vane was loose and installed in the incorrect direction. The VSV actuator rod was incorrectly fastened and secured to the VSV actuator, allowing fuel to leak from the fitting. The VSV rod end muscle line was fractured in the weld, and the 6 o'clock seal drain line on the inboard thrust reverser half was blocked with sealant above the lower bifurcation fire seal and in the exit tube.
I feel like you just went through aviation mechanic Mad Libs. Those words, I understand all of those words individually, but put together, none of that has any meaning to me.
Yes. So, long story short, the investigation is focusing on the maintenance that was performed on the right-hand engine of this particular aircraft. Because not only did things break, but there were pieces of the engine installed incorrectly. So the NTSB is looking at the maintenance on that particular engine to understand what went into maintaining that engine and how those pieces came to be installed incorrectly. So the NTSB has retained a bunch of things, including that L2 slide, because it was caught in the door frame. The NTSB says that it was removed from its bustle and on the floor of the L2 passageway with its safety pin installed. The slide pack was inspected, and the Bannis latch, we've talked about Bannis latches before.
Yes, we have.
The Bannis latch was found to move freely. Okay, that's good news. Some dark scuffs on the outboard side of the pack, and there was a tear on the underside of the girt fabric towards the center. You don't want tears in your girt fabric, Jason.
You don't. I don't know what any of that is, but yeah, I can identify when you don't want something.
Yes, there is that. So just a preliminary report, but we'll toss the link in the show notes because it does have some good pictures of the engine and the damage to the aircraft. That aircraft has since already been repaired and is, I believe, scheduled to return to service relatively soon. Let's do a quick check to see if it's back in service or not. Survey says, no, it was flown earlier this week or late last week from Denver to Peru, Indiana, which is where American performs a lot of its aircraft painting. So I would expect to see that aircraft ferry out to Chicago after it's done painting and then re-enter service.
Just needed a little touch-up.
Just a bit of a touch-up. Yep.
Yeah, coat over the char.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they got rid of the char completely. They replaced the outer panels, and then off it goes for paint. Let's switch gears and now move into Airbus and Boeing orders and deliveries for the month of May, because we are getting ready, hopefully, I think, for a couple big orders at the Paris Air Show next week. But we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Jason.
Yes.
I'm going to give you a quiz.
Okay.
How many orders did Airbus take in during the month of May?
752 and a half.
I'm curious to understand how you order half a plane.
Well, I mean, if you order anything with a Pratt & Whitney engine, you're probably getting maybe half a plane. So,
Ouch. Ouch.
ouch. I'm only a little bitter because I'm supposed to fly on an Air Canada A320 later this week, and now it's a janky old A319, probably because Air Canada doesn't have enough working A220s, so I had to get that jab in there. But you know what
Fair
the
enough.
actual number was?
What's the actual number?
0. The first
0.
time, I believe, and I looked at all the order logs for Airbus, the first time Airbus has clocked 0 new orders for a month since Quiz for You. Since when?
I'm going to say since deep COVID. So
Ooh.
2021, 2021, I'll say.
No, August 2022, well into the, oh my God, we need more airplanes after phase of COVID.
Interesting.
Oddly, August 2022, no orders for Airbus that month. First time since then. But I would expect June is going to be quite a bit busier for Airbus.
Yes.
They're saving the good stuff for next month.
There you go. No orders in May, but also no cancellations. So they were net 0 on the month. Airbus delivered 51 aircraft, 3 A350-900s, 3 A330-900s, 40 A320neo family aircraft, and 5 A220s.
I don't think we have to say neo family aircraft anymore. If they're still delivering a CO, I have some questions.
Then it's a thing, right?
That would be impressive.
Yeah.
And then there's Boeing.
Yeah. Boeing, for its part, did not save up for June, though it could still be getting ready to top this. It took in 303 orders during the month of May, which is the most since last Paris Air Show in June of 2023. The bulk of that order book was the big Qatar Airways order that was announced in Doha last month. So that was 120 787s and 30 777-9s. That's down from 160 aircraft because the 10 that went away were previously undisclosed. So those have now been accounted for and announced. Undisclosed airlines purchased 7 787s during the month of May, and Boeing took in orders for 146 737 MAX aircraft, 119 to undisclosed airlines, 20 by Aviation, and 7 to WestJet.
146 737 MAX just out of the blue, and 119 going to something, somewhere. Those are air show numbers, not just a random month in the year numbers. That's impressive.
And it's odd because that's a pre-air show month.
Yeah, I wonder if the 119 is all for one carrier or several or many, or is there really one giant undisclosed order there of 119? But maybe we'll see an order for 119 aircraft revealed next month.
Exactly.
Was it you?
Or multiple orders for smaller numbers revealed not next month, next week.
Next week, yes.
Yeah. Also of note with Boeing, 737 MAX production is now at 38 per month, which is the rate limit set by the FAA. The FAA, for its part, they're in no rush to increase the available rate for Boeing. Boeing says that by the end of the year, it wants to be able to increase that rate, but they're not rushing things, which is probably a good idea. In May, 31 MAX delivered, 1 P-8, which is the maritime surveillance aircraft based on the Frankenplane, based on the 737NG with all sorts of modifications, 1 767 freighter, 5 777 freighters, and 7 787s. So a solid month of deliveries for both Boeing and Airbus, but Boeing runs away with the order book in May. We'll see how things go in June. I'm sure we'll be talking about this after the Paris Air Show next week. ATR received its largest order since 2017 this week.
What's happening? They're supposed to wait for the air show, not the week before the air show. That's not how any of this is supposed to work.
They're getting in before something. I'm not sure. But Uni Air, which is an EVA Air subsidiary, ordered 19 ATR 72s. So that's a replacement and addition to their current fleet. So that'll complement them in Taiwan nicely.
If they just waited a couple more days, they could have picked up a bunch from Silver.
Yeah, maybe that's still part of the plan.
Could be.
Yep. Spirit Airlines has finalized a compensation package with Pratt & Whitney. This is a follow-on from last year's compensation package. The one for 2025 will be monthly stipends that will total between $150 and $195 million by the end of the year, depending on how many aircraft are actually on the ground. RTX, which is the parent company of Pratt & Whitney and is responsible for 50% of the GTF engine, they say that it's still targeting $2.9 billion overall as far as what compensation it will pay out as part of the geared turbofan issues and groundings.
Well, good that they have at least some money coming their way. Spirit can't really seem to get anything going its way right now, but this will certainly help the bottom line.
Every little bit helps. Wizz Air is negotiating for more with Pratt & Whitney. So they have had, beginning in early March, they were at 42 GTF groundings. Then it was 37, and now it's 34, hopefully by the end of the summer. So moving in the right direction, though Wizz still says that they're expecting each engine to be off the wing of the aircraft for 300 days, which is better than it was, but
not particularly good.
Not particularly good at all. In interesting comments at an investor forum this week, Southwest Airlines CEO Bob Jordan said that the airline could begin to monetize its order book, which is a fun way of saying we've got big orders, we've got great prices. If we don't need those particular aircraft because we haven't been growing as much as we planned or wanted to, we could sell those orders to another airline for market price, which on the face of it sounds not a terrible idea. But Jason, you had an interesting point that, I mean, orders may come, orders may go, but once orders are gone,
they're gone. Yeah. If you locked in a great deal on aircraft because you're Southwest and you're ordering a ton of them at once and you got a great deal, if you're selling off a bunch of them and suddenly you need them 5 years from now, you're probably not going to get those order slots back at such a favorable rate. So I don't know. I'm no CEO by any means, but this kind of feels like I should feel like I see a commercial on local Dallas TV late night of like crazy Bob Jordan's 737 MAX discount emporium.
Come
like,
on down.
Our prices are insane. Come down and get them because we ordered too many and we're overstocked. Like maybe those ads are running in Dallas. I don't know.
Come on down to Love Field.
Yeah, it's just, I can't figure out in my head if this is like a fantastic genius move that'll bring in some, I guess, badly needed revenue, or if this is just a colossally terrible idea. We'll find out. But anything goes at Southwest these days, as long as it brings in a quick buck for short-term gain.
Oh, okay. In that case, I have some ideas.
Go for it.
In the on-again...
You got no ideas.
I'm moving on. In the on-again, off-again tariff and other technology-related and other raw materials-related competition and conflict between the U.S. and China, the U.S. has placed or will place restrictions on major components that are integral to COMAC's development and completion of aircraft, especially the C919 and the C909. This was first reported by our good friend John Ostrower over at the Air Current. These restrictions on export licenses cover things like engines for the C919 and C909, things like components that are produced by Honeywell and RTX. And so those types of things are being halted. But in the announced framework to talk about I don't know if I have the right number of layers here. It's a framework to discuss the framework that was agreed upon in Geneva that they thought was an agreed framework. So if you're as confused as I am, good, because I think we're all in the right place. This is one of the things that is, I think, being used as a negotiating tactic to bring the U.S. back into being able to receive rare earth minerals from China.
I mean, it's a pretty good tactic, but China's not in a great position here where they're refusing delivery of 737 MAX because they obviously don't want to pay the astronomical tariffs on those aircraft. Who could blame them? But at the same time, they can't import the engines that they need for their own homegrown aircraft. So they can't once they run out of the already acquired stock of those engines, that's it. So you can't buy new American aircraft. You can't keep producing any of your own homegrown aircraft. What do you do? This is a very stupid position for everyone to find themselves in. But hey, maybe the understanding to create a memorandum of understanding for a framework of a to be determined later on deal will come through, and they'll be able to do what they were doing 3 weeks ago and take delivery of planes. Who knows?
On that note, 2 days ago, N230 Bravo Echo made its way back to China.
Do we know why yet?
Well, it flew over to the delivery center. So things might be moving in the right direction. So this was the aircraft, or one of the aircraft, that flew from Seattle to China in March, then flew from China to Seattle in April. It went for storage out at Moses Lake. It came back to Seattle at the beginning of June and has ended up back at Boeing's completion and delivery center in China. So we'll see if they actually deliver this particular aircraft or if it just gets flown back to Seattle one more time.
Few 737s have made this many trans-Pacific journeys.
That's true.
I mean, other than, United Historic Island Hopper, which is amazing. Not too many 737s going back and forth like this.
No, this is an unusual situation for sure. Let's stick to some regional jets for a minute because the Embraer E175, it's just going to keep on ticking forever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
At least in one specific market.
Which is the U.S. market.
Yes, where we're going with this is wholly owned subsidiary, I believe, of American Piedmont, because American has a couple wholly owned subsidiaries, will introduce the E175 to its fleet, apparently starting in 2028, according to airlinegeeks.com. I hadn't seen this before, which is a little disappointing to me because Piedmont historically has been kind of the weirdo airline that operated back in the day the little Dash 8s, currently the E145, so the other aircraft, never anything bigger than that. And to see it bring into the fold just your regular old boring 76-seat regional jets with Wi-Fi and power outlets and all that just kind of makes Piedmont much less interesting to me,
I had never really given it that much thought.
Nor should you, because it's Piedmont. Nobody thinks about Piedmont.
Apparently you do.
They're just there. But it's good for them, obviously.
Okay, great. Sticking with E175s.
That was a great segment. Let's pat ourselves on the back for that one.
I'm astonished that you've given so much thought to Piedmont.
I haven't at this very moment.
There you go. So while Piedmont is getting E175s, Envoy Air, also a wholly owned subsidiary of American Airlines, is getting more as well. So they're going to add 33 E175s to their fleet. So that will happen from 2026. These will be brand new aircraft joining the Envoy fleet, and they will be delivered in 2026 and 2027. So more E175s all around for everybody. They're not going anywhere. And like we've talked about in the past, they're great planes.
Yeah, I like them. I wish they were the E2s, but I'll take an E1 happily any day.
And you'll get it for eternity.
If you insist.
Okay. Speaking of E175s, let's switch over to United and talk about this fun little diversion that our friend Seth Miller flagged. Jason, what happened?
Yeah, so this is really a kudos story to the operations, I guess, at United, but more likely at Republic. Is it Republic Airways these days? I forget. They changed their name, right? I think it's Republic Airways, is it?
If only we had some sort of box that we could look things up on.
Yes, if only. Yes, it's Republic Airways these days. Anyway, Seth had flagged that on June 7th, United 3462 Dulles to Nassau, Bahamas, diverted to Jacksonville, Florida for a mechanical issue. Jacksonville is not a hub of United by any means, so that would typically mean a very long day for both passengers and crew of that flight. However, coincidentally, at the same time that flight was diverting to Jacksonville, another Republic United branded E-175 was ferrying out of Gainesville, Florida, which is basically next door to Jacksonville, ferrying out after a Wi-Fi install. It was ferrying up to Columbus, Ohio, and just after probably getting to cruising altitude, they diverted over to Jacksonville. And after a go-around due to an unstable approach, and then they landed and they scooped up passengers, and they continued their way on down to the Bahamas. And I thought that was just really an interesting service recovery, that you would take a not-in-service aircraft very nearby, divert that, basically probably swap out the crews, pick everyone up in the working aircraft and leave the broken aircraft back in Jacksonville. I just thought it was one of those situations that probably nobody in the operations center of Republic thought anyone would care or pick up on, but Seth Miller did, and it's just one of those cool stories where just things work out well for
it. All worked out, yeah. Instead of an overnight delay or a full day's delay, I mean, it was just a couple hours. So
I would have loved to hear the announcement in Jacksonville, like the gate agent going, "Folks, you won't believe this. A brand new empty plane just took off out of Gainesville. Don't ask questions. Gainesville doesn't make any sense. We have snagged it out of the air and rerouted it to Jacksonville." And
literally snagged it out of the air.
Okay, whatever. Fun story.
All right, great.
You want to do the opposite of a fun story?
Yeah, let's do the opposite now.
Go for it.
So last week we talked about a Condor flight that missed the curfew, or missed its extended curfew in Munich. This is a flight where it took over a day for the passengers to go nowhere. This was a more than 30-hour journey with 5 flights to end up back exactly where they started.
Zurich to Zurich.
Oh, man.
What happened?
So there was flight 1. The intended destination was Heraklion from Zurich. That was fine, but they had to divert to Athens because of strong winds. Okay, one diversion. That's fine. We can deal with that.
All the time.
They left Athens again, waited. The weather did not improve, and then they diverted to Kos, which is not as far away as... So they're getting closer to where they're trying to go, because it's not as far away as Athens, but it's still not where they're trying to go. So then they had to figure out where they were going to go next, because they didn't want to leave the aircraft there, and they wanted to put the passengers somewhere overnight. So they went to Thessalonica. Then they woke up the next day, and the plane flew, it circled, it went back to Athens. Then they said, forget it, we're going back to Zurich.
We're going back to Switzerland.
Those poor people.
That's tough. What we don't know is what happened in the end. Did their passengers ever get there? Some say they're still en route today.
They put them on a ferry.
Ooh, that's from Switzerland. That might take a while.
I don't know how that would actually work, but I mean, once you get to the Italian coast, you can get there pretty quickly.
Sure.
Yeah. Ouch. Obviously this is not what anyone ever wants to happen, but it seems that Condor in this one did the best they could. Some interesting attempts were made. I suppose. And they got very close, but in the interest of safety, you don't try and land when it's not safe. And they didn't do that. So I think that's bottom line. It sucks, but safety first.
Yes. And then it somehow gets worse again. I think this one might be worse. Do you think so?
So I get why this happened.
Somebody goofed.
And this was something goes wrong. We've got a plan. The plan has a hole in it, but we didn't figure out the hole until it was too late. So here's what happened. An American Airlines flight to Italy needed a different aircraft.
The first day of operation, I believe, for the seasonal route between Philly and Naples. So I believe it was the first day of the year for this particular route.
So the aircraft departs having been switched from a 787-8 to a 787-9. So great, aircraft swap. They departed a little late, not a problem. As they're descending into Naples.
You know what? I take it back. Not the first day at all. Totally started back in early May. So take that excuse away. Never mind.
All right. So as they're descending into Naples, it is understood, determined, found out that the aircraft cannot land in Naples, and it diverts to Rome. Safe diversion, not a problem there. But now the question is, why couldn't the aircraft land in Naples? The weather was fine. There was nothing wrong with the aircraft. What's going on here? Well, it turns out that the 787-9 is too big for Naples Airport. The 787-9 is a Category 9 aircraft, and only aircraft that are Category 8 or below can land at Naples.
Yeah, that's perfect, because they were going to fly the 787-8, Category 8. They flew the Category 9. You can't fly a -9 there. It's right there in the numbers.
It's right there in the name. Exactly. So thankfully for both American Airlines and the passengers, there was a 787-8 available in Rome that they then ferried to Naples, and they swapped the other flight to the 9, and all was right with the world.
Yeah, again, quick airline operation, thinking and recovery there to steal an aircraft that they could use from another flight, and probably nobody even noticed the difference from those who were supposed to be in the -8 back to, I don't know, Chicago or something. Probably didn't even know that they were on a different aircraft at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there was no knowledge amongst the passengers of what was happening.
No.
So how about that? Let's see. Where do we want to go next, Jason?
Let's go to, you just have Finnair meeting notes. I have no, because Finnair is going to start flying to Toronto. No, wait, you don't live in Toronto. So what Finnair meeting is this?
I don't live in Toronto. So this week marks the 10th anniversary of Finnair flying to Chicago. So we went to a little celebration yesterday, got to chat with Finnair's GM for North America, whose job just got larger now that they're flying to Toronto in short order. But I also got to chat with the Chicago Department of Aviation commissioner and congratulate him on his new sewer. So that was a fun conversation. So I'll put a link in the show notes, because this is one of those things where if you're listening to this podcast, you'll probably watch the minute-long video of a tunnel boring machine and see some stats on what they did. But as part of the satellite concourse development, O'Hare is infilling its catch basin where the rainwater would collect. So they filled that in. And because they're filling in, they need the water to go somewhere. So they've dug an 8,000-foot long, 50-foot deep sewer pipe, basically, or storm drain to catch the storm water. And that has now been finished. And they put together a nice little video with the tunnel boring machine and how much earth had been moved and where it was going and all that good fun stuff.
Is this using the pipes that I took that picture of when the last time I was in O'Hare that were United branded? But a different United?
No, that's separate. This was a much larger, I mean, I think it's 20 some odd feet in width.
Oh, yeah. These were not that.
No, But the one thing I did want to mention is in our conversations yesterday was noted that demand does seem to be softening in the back of the aircraft come fall. So now, whether that's a question of are people just waiting later to book, or is this a real thing, kind of ex-Europe into the US, into North America, demand does seem to be softening, especially in the economy cabin. So it'll be interesting to see whether that's something that's actually happening or whether it's something that is just people are waiting longer and longer to book because they don't know what's going to happen. So Finnair is keeping a close eye on it. And as a result, I think we are too. Not just with Finnair, but with all airlines that are flying into the US. Yesterday, the NTSB announced that they will hold a 3-day hearing beginning July 30th, running through August 1st on the January 29th mid-air collision between a PSA Airlines CRJ-700 and a U.S. Army Sikorsky Black Hawk helicopter. The 3-day investigative hearing will be to gain additional insight and additional information under oath from participants, as well as understanding more about the circumstances of this particular crash. The investigative hearing is open to the public and will be live streamed. So we will have a link to that when it becomes available later next month. But that is one that I think you would want to mark on your calendars to watch or at least be aware of. And obviously we'll have some full coverage of that as it happens. And with that note, I think that this brings us to the end of episode 324 of AvTalk.
All right.
Thank you all so very much for listening. If you listen to the podcast anywhere besides the Flight Radar 24 webpage, which you can do, and you can download it from there. But if you get it on Apple or Spotify or where have you, you might feel inclined to leave a rating or a review so that the podcast becomes more visible, so that people know what they're getting into by listening to AvTalk. And you can let us know how you feel, good, bad. Let us know what you want to see. And you can always email us at podcast@fr24.com if you have comments, questions, or suggestions. This has been episode 324 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.